Benjamin Castle are Americans. Watching the footy.
Liam Ryan saying, kick it my way, I want to jump over the pack, and here he comes! Ryan!
This is Buddy Franklin! This is the greatest showman!
Got the handball off to Myers. Myers looking for the lead of Stengel. Gee, they're good. Gee, they're sharp. Razzle dazzle Rioli.
Oh, who else? McDonald!
No,
around the body. Jazz up!
He's off from inside the centre square. Boys kick the goal. Boys kick the goal from inside the centre. Fuck! I can't believe it.
Good time of day and welcome to episode 257 of Americans Watching the Footy. I am Benjamin Castle coming to you from South San Francisco, California, alongside birthday boy Brian Harambe.
I'm Ethan Castle coming to you from St. Louis, Missouri, where I just got in a few hours ago. I'm just here for a couple days, had some flight credits and stuff to make use of. But don't worry, I am not a bad parent. I celebrated Brian Harambe's birthday all morning.
Now, why in the first place are you in St. Louis, Ethan?
Go to a couple baseball games. Only been here once before and was only really in the actual city for like a day. Never got to the Gateway Arch, among other things. So it was definitely it was something worth coming back to.
And this is really the last trip you're going to take that isn't high school sports related until, March, April?
Now I've got a quick little Denver getaway in a few weeks as well.
Gonna see our cousin?
Potentially, just was texting him about that earlier today. But yeah, welcome.
As I said, good time of day, whenever, wherever, however you're listening, obviously.
Hopefully you're listening to this the best way we know how, on public transit at full volume without headphones.
Well, this is our round 24, mostly recap. It's like Monty Python Live, mostly, because obviously, as of our recording of this, 9 out of 10 games have occurred in the first ever 10-game round. Get used to it. Canberra for Team 20, please. Then get the Giants to play at, maybe Locktown for a game, Albury for a game. Totally serious about trying to get the Giants to play at Albury for one.
The only thing that would be a downer would be, Tom Green not getting to play as much in front of his fan club.
However, my proposal would be to have an annual Anzac Night game between Canberra and GWS. And who knows, maybe Tom would go ahead and make the move to Canberra and be their inaugural captain. They'd push for it, but we'll talk more about the somehow underrated Tom Green in the second half of this episode.
Let's talk about the games, I guess. There were only 2 of the 9 that have been played so far that were complete dead rubbers, and the first one of those was one of them. Essendon 8-8-56, defeated by Carlton 13-12-90.
Essendon did a move that not even Geelong would dare to do. Brad Scott pulled off a double late change.
Oh no, we've had a couple of late changes over the years, but I can't recall the last one, but not having Jaden Laverde isn't exactly a major loss. Not having Sam Durham, however, is a significant loss.
Did we learn anything? Did we learn anything new about either of these teams, Ethan?
Yeah, it took until the end of the season in a completely meaningless game, but the Blues did it. They made in-game adjustments.
We
are the Navy Blues.
Had a 5-goal halftime lead, and then Essendon came out strong to start the third, got the first couple goals. The Blues conceded the first goal of the second half in 20 out of 23 games, according to Swamp. That's just an incredible number. And after putting on absolutely no pressure in the first half and looking completely disinterested and wanting to just not get hurt and go on vacation, Essendon really amped up the pressure going into the second half. And then the Blues controlled possession for a few minutes, kind of took the air out of the ball, slowed things down with some uncontested play, and reasserted control, and got the lead out to about 6 goals.
One of the big aggressors for Essendon throughout the game was Isaac Kako, who just continues to impress us and has had a pretty strong year one overall, even though he didn't always hit the scoreboard. He did in this game twice, picking 2-1 off his 19 disposals. Unfortunately, never got the chance to meet his family when I was down in San Diego. Maybe that'll happen another time. Just a lot of smaller to mid-sized players hitting the scoreboard. Matt Guelphy kicking 3-1. He's not the showerhead he once was, but just thrown in that half-forward area. And then for the Blues, how about this late-season push from Frank the Tank Evans? Are you satisfied with this, Ethan? He is a former Cat, but it's on Carlton that he's succeeding.
Oh, yeah.
Right now.
It seems like, I forget who it was that we followed that had tweeted this, but he has this tendency to do just enough to hang around on lists. And a good late season surge will help him stick around, I would think.
Well, this is just his fourth game of at least 3 goals in the AFL out of his 44 that he's now played. In his last 4 games now, he's had 11 goals, so strong finish.
Yeah, he had the 4 against Gold Coast back in round 22. This is one of the few times, this and I guess the Port game last week as well, where we've really gotten to see like full capacity Sam Walsh, who missed a bunch of games with injuries to start the year and just wasn't ever really up to full speed, wasn't looking like he was at 100% or close to it.
He is a really strong enabler, even if he isn't the one to always get the ball right at stop. Is just a good player to feed it to right off that. So often the best option for types like Patrick Cripps or George Hewitt to feed it to, then either of them could get on overlaps from there, et cetera, et cetera. I wouldn't quite compare it to a Hayden Young situation because Young can do the dirty work too. And I see him doing a bit more of it than Walsh, but like something between Hayden Young and Will Day and that sort of importance off stoppage.
It really affects Patrick Cripps' game the most.
Carlton P. Cripps, 3 votes.
I mean, he might. I thought George Hewitt was really sharp in this one as well, capping off what was a fantastic individual season that'll largely go to waste. Also, Jesse Motlock was in the middle and was pretty sharp. Now, I had tweeted, like, why don't they do this more? Like just to kind of get him involved in games. But one of our followers, Frumpy, had said, he was getting smashed the other way against good teams when they had tried it earlier in the year. So that is worth taking into consideration. But I do think that there's something to, at least on occasion, getting him into the midfield. Just if he's having a quiet game, it's like, all right, we're better off when he's active. How can we insert him? That's a great way to do it. Jacob Wiedering in the fourth quarter, like Essendon once again got it down to 20 points, but then they started just kicking everything at Wiedering, and that was kind of it. Umpiring in this game was really badly in Carlton's favor. Unfortunately, didn't affect the outcome.
I still insist that umpiring hasn't flipped a single game this year.
Couple of two very different definitions of a high tackle. There was one where Todd Goldstein got called for a block when he just got grabbed around the neck. Also, every major, longtime legacy Big Four club needs to just suck it up and put on a alternate jersey so we can actually tell you apart. Collingwood is the only one that actually does.
Well, Collingwood, though, should always be wearing white pants, like how Geelong does it with their home games.
You're not that special.
What do you mean? This is a 32 Cups game.
I do love that there was a little bit of online discourse about the trophy circle photo.
I love that is living on in some way. It is absolutely beautiful. Now, we'll talk a lot about both these clubs in our next couple episodes because So You Didn't Crack the 8 will return for its 4th edition. Postmortems for the non-finalist clubs.
One other Essendon thing, Zach Merritt coming back in to play his 250th game. He was pretty good. I think polished turd has to be between him and Kako. Maybe leaning Kako, but can't go wrong with either.
Surprised he didn't get chaired off because he did for his 200th despite a beatdown by Geelong.
Yeah, that was strange to me too.
Is that a victory for Kane Corns?
I mean, I think Tom Stewart got chaired off at 150, which it would have been funnier if it was against Port instead of the Crows.
that was last year then in Adelaide, I think.
Yes.
Although, of course, Geelong also played in Adelaide this year for... Gather round. I also think about this because there was a chairing off for a 200th game the next night at the end of Collingwood's 1 goal, or rather 6 behind victory over Melbourne. Collingwood 11-16-82, defeating Melbourne 11-10-76. The player chaired off was the skunk, Tim Membry, who is in fitting colors given his nickname. I don't think that's been mentioned enough.
I have watched very, very little of this game other than the ending.
I got a kick out of going back and watching this one. I was in no shape to be watching early morning footy these past couple weeks, but I'll definitely be in the right mode come finals and probably for the Wednesday fixture as well, as weird as that's going to be. Multiple early chances just went wanting for Collingwood. It's pretty indicative when they kicked 2-7 for the first quarter. Although the expected score ended up being reasonably close to the final score, 88.4 to 73.6. There was this pervasive feeling throughout the middle quarters for sure that this inaccuracy for Collingwood was going to come back to bite them. It quite nearly did before some later game steadiness from the likes of Lachie Schultz and then Dan McStay. They had the last 2 goals for Collingwood. Schultz gave them the lead with just under 8 minutes left, and then McStay brought it out to a 7-point margin, and only 1 point was scored after that, despite multiple chances for Melbourne.
Even during stretch where the rest of the team has not played that well, Lachie Schultz has continued a really nice bounce back season.
Is this kind of like a "we told you so"?
Yeah. I don't, would he be the winner of a hypothetical comeback player of the year award?
Because Riley Philthorpe played a few games at the end of 2024, maybe.
Or what about someone?
Could we say Bailey? I mean, we could say Bazlenka because of his ACL.
Yeah, I was trying to think of others who are coming off injury that kind of just reminded everyone.
Bailey Smith is the one that stands out. But Schultz would be another one that would be at least worthy of mention in there. Philthorpe played 6 games at the end of last year? Was it 7? He played the last 7 games and kicked 15 goals in that time. So yeah, I don't think it could
already this guy's just massive. So there wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, comeback player of the year, which is a common award in American sports, is kind of a hilarious award because to qualify for it, basically
either it's hey, you were down the year before, or you had this really bad injury and now you're back to what you should be. It's never an award you want to win, and especially not twice, Chad Pennington.
It was really funny. A couple years ago for the NFL, it was between Damar Hamlin and Joe Flacco. Damar Hamlin coming back from his heart stopping on the field, and Joe Flacco getting picked up just off his couch basically, and all of a sudden hey, you're a starting QB again, and you're actually kind of good, and now you're starting a playoff game. So that was extremely funny.
But no, Schultz would be a nice idea just as a nominee there. Not sure if that's an award that is really talked about much in Australia. As for the strong contributors to this game for Melbourne, Bailey Fritsch finishing the season pretty well. 3 goals straight and 10 marks to go along with an assist on 17 disposals. He looked really rocky for most of the season, but I think delivery has been a bit better, and just some of the targets have been more varied. I think more of the eyes being on Melksham and Pickett might have helped him somewhat. And
I
then
think he was pretty good in that Bulldogs game a couple weeks ago. I've been, both of us have been kind of going through older games, making sure to get things right for awards, for votes, as we are, of course, continuing America's Brownlow this year. And I don't remember if you had talked about during the game that is only remembered for what Nazaya did at the end. But those first 3 quarters, Fritsch was one of Melbourne's best.
Yeah, he ended up kicking 3-2 in that game that had 4 straight the next week against the Eagles. Even though he's been inaccurate this year, let's credit Fritsch for now having, all right, say it, Anthony. yeah, 13 multi-goal games, just less accurate is the thing, but, still a potent goal kicker, and a more active game from Jacob Van Rooyen will help as well. Down year for him. I think he could bounce back really strongly next year. I want to see him and Matt Jefferson get more time together in the ones, and I just wonder how a different coach may deploy the forwards differently. Who knows if Troy Chaplin was serious about not being a candidate, because this was a pretty good showing for a caretaker to have against this Collingwood team that was largely at full strength. I'll say Max Gawn got the better of Darcy Cameron, even though the hit-out numbers were slightly in Cameron's favor. I think Vaughn might have done a bit more with it, more in the air. By just pure fantasy points and stuff, I think, 8 of the top 9 of this game were Melbourne players. And by champion data, they have 3 of the top 4. Harvey Langford got all sorts of love, the highest rated set at 21.6. Langford with pretty good full oval game, a goal from 26 and 7 marks, couple clearances and score launches to his name. He's probably up there in the top 5 of the rising star. And
he's not going to be, he's not in the conversation. It's Murphy Reed, Dan Curtin, Levi Ashcroft. I think Connor O'Sullivan's a pretty clear 4th, but you can make an argument for Langford as the 5th.
I think a lot of people might put Langford over O'Sullivan, and I think Archie Roberts might be over him as well.
No, I think when you listen to any conversation about it, O'Sullivan usually comes up as the 4th one.
I think there's a solid top 3 and then a next 3 that I put O'Sullivan, Langford, and Roberts all in. But remember that Melbourne doesn't just have Langford. They got Xavier Lindsay, who definitely went through growing pains. Caleb Windsor, who has gone through some physical pains. Judd McVie is still on the young side. We'll see if he sticks around. And up front, there's Van Rooyen and Jefferson. They deployed Jed Adams in the back. Jai Cully has looked pretty reasonable in his stints after being a supplemental pickup and just grinding it out into 2s. Unfortunately, he face planted after a marking contest and had to be taken out in the 4th quarter. But it was a kind of performance that Eagles fans should have expected from him a couple years ago had he not torn his ACL. So I hope he can continue with the Ds. Collingwood will be awaiting more word on Jeremy Howe's status because he did his groin because Jeremy Howe cannot catch break.
And then there was also an injury concern with Beau McCreary at one point, right?
Yeah, but he ended up factoring into the 4th quarter and had some pretty important plays throughout the later portion of the game too. He was involved in a couple scoring sequences, including one that led to a Jamie Elliott goal around midway through the 4th quarter. And he actually ended up giving Collingwood the lead with a miss with 6 minutes and change remaining. So McCreary was fine. He's just a winning play guy that we talk about a lot. You especially, Ethan. The old guard definitely stood up for Collingwood later on. Jack Crisp, 1-1 from 18, 7 tackles and 6 marks, stood out throughout the game. But Steele Sidebottom had an important goal in there. And Scott Pendlebury went back to taking some kick-ins. And those ended up being pretty important. In addition to his 2 assists in his 21 disposal effort, Pendlebury ended up with six score involvements. So a bit more of the defensive-minded job from Pendlebury. 2 score launches definitely would have been those more effective kick-ins. And I mentioned this to Ethan the other day. It reminds me of his kick-ins leading to good things a couple years ago. When Collingwood had that after the siren winner against Essendon, I believe it was a Scott Pendlebury kick-in that started that off. So there was a flexibility there and a reliability in the older players still. Who knows if this year or next will end up proving as the last dance for this Pies group, but there's something left in the tank and it's enjoyable. It is enjoyable to watch. And that qualifying final should be fun.
So you seem, just reading into what you've talked about, you seem pretty encouraged about Collingwood's overall state. Feel like they, other than kicking actual goals, they seem to do things right in this game, yeah?
I think largely Still some defensive questions, just defending certain leads. But Melksham is a pretty tough assignment for a lot of smaller defenders, and Isaac Quainer came up against it. The same time, in their forward 50, Jamie Elliott definitely got the better of Stephen May. So I think things average out. If Collingwood can kick accurately, they should contend with pretty much anybody. And I look forward to them going back to Adelaide. Speaking of Adelaide, at the same time as that game at the G, well, I think it started, an hour later, but they directly overlapped. A glorious send-off for Ken Hinckley and Travis Boak. The big number 10 banner made me think about the giant 20 that was unveiled on Mount Davis in 2002 after Scott Hatteberg's walk-off home run.
Yeah, I thought the exact same thing.
Port Adelaide 10-11-71, defeating Gold Coast 9-13-67. I was awake for most of the second half of this one, and this is the first time that I think I was really on the side of the 22 when a 22 versus 18 situation. I think the umpires somewhat got blinded by certain moments. At the same time, I still think Port were the rightful winners, ?
I'm going to have to go back through this and do like a really thorough review because there were a lot of bad calls both ways. Port had 6 of the 7 first kick, 6 of the first 7 free kicks, and then things swung back the other way, and then they were just inconsistent and bad altogether. I said even before halftime, like late second quarter, already in the running for one of the worst umpiring performances of the year, just an amazing lack of consistency on all fronts. Let me see, what do I have in here?
There was a clutchness to this game that Port had that Gold Coast didn't, and that just kind of goes along with the whole SOS, same old Suns idea. And I like that a lot of it in the fourth quarter was just spread throughout the lineup. You had some big marks from Mitch Georgiadis, for example, and he ended up with 4 goals, but also Jack Whitlock with a huge spoil right near the end. Whitlock twins showed well in the final part of the season. Jack at Port, Matt, the very pricey trade for North from draft night.
Let's see, just going through my notes, specific bad calls that I have. I mean, the very first point of the game, Mitch Georgiadis getting paid a free kick for holding the ball when it probably should have been Whitlock's. Then right before the end of the first quarter, Aliir gets shoved by Ethan Reed. Probably could have stopped his momentum sooner, but ended up into the fence. There was no push in the back called, and then Aliir was mad, and it was kind of borderline if this is worth a 50. His kind of like shot on Ben King, that gives the Suns a goal at the quarter time siren. Let's see. We had a Connor Butterick mark paid that clearly hit the ground. I don't think that one led to a score, but that one was like objectively awful. Mitch Georgiadis kind of sold a shove in the back to give Port the lead with 12 minutes left.
I think his other efforts kind of cancel out the lesser nature of that seller, however you want to describe it. I mentioned his important marks throughout the game. Georgiadis ended up with how many goals for the season? How about 58?
Remember a few years ago, it was like he was kind of just playing off of Charlie Dixon to have
he
50.
he bulked up a bit and then just has been very confident ever since returning from his ACL injury that he suffered, I believe, in the twos in 2023. The last 2 years now, he's combined to kick 102 goals.
But just if you're telling me that he's going to go and kick 58 with Todd Marshall missing the entire season, that is a big positive for Port.
Todd Marshall missing the entire season, hardly any impact from Jeremy Finlayson, who's probably gone, little from Ollie Lord. Sam Powell-Pepper did his ACL, but Powell-Pepper was present for the ending festivities after Travis Boak did his lap of honor, which gave me Selwood vibes from Selwood. Was it his like 350th or something, or whatever it was? But Boak ran around for a lap and then got cheered off by Powell Pepper and Ollie Wines, who also missed this game due to suspension.
Which, by the way, I think Port's team trying to argue to get rid of the suspension used shitty arguments there more than anything. But the bad calls, Darcy Burne-Jones getting debutant Lachlan Golden holding the ball, could have been a high tackle that would have given the Suns a chance to take the lead. And then Lachie Jones getting away with a pretty clear hold on Mac Andrew with 5 seconds left that could have given Andrew a chance after the siren. So
Again,
that would have been an amazing ending. But this was just, first off, Ken Hinckley summed up, that basically they were playing, they were missing how many guys they were playing, how many guys with like no experience. Hell of a post-game press conference, by the way. He was just messing with everybody. And I've had the discussion about Ken Hinckley. If you're a Port fan, I'm sure there's frustration over not even making a grand final with him. But like, if you're not a Port fan, whether you like them or not, he is such a great character. And it's fun when a team with such a rabid fan base like Port is relevant, whether they're winning or losing.
is Ken Hinckley the main character of our podcast era or our 6 years watching the footy so far?
He might be.
Definitely the non-player main character.
And then Travis Boak, just all around good person. It's just like, I want to be your friend. You seem like a really good guy. I loved after Connor Rosie's goal when he made a 10 symbol with his fingers. Just, this was very cool for Port to win this game.
I almost wondered if Rosie would have like given up the captaincy for a game to give it back to Boak, because I believe Boak is their longest tenured AFL captain. But still, the situation was great all around, and Boak left it out there. 22 disposals, 5 clearances, 9 tackles.
If he had wanted to go on for another year and try to push for 400, he could have. But I am in favor of going out on your own terms instead of kind of being forced out. Also, what if you get hurt and you don't get to that milestone? I'm
also just a clean break with the end of the Hinckley era, real time for the club to move on. It all seems like the right time.
Just so many guys for Port that aren't supposed to be big contributors having to step up. Joe Richards has continued just really good form that's kind of gone on all year. That's been another bright side thing. And then I think they had 3 mid-season draftees playing in this game. Manny Liddy, and then debuts for Harrison Ram, who didn't do a ton, and then Ewan McKinley, who was pretty active early and had a few positive moments, including his first career goal. Like, for them to be able to win this game, like, there is such a gap outside of, Butters and Rosie in what they were up against. And for them to be able to win this game that is inspiring. And it gives you hope for what the future is going to look like at Port.
I think it was also satisfaction because all 3 of those guys, yes, they were all mid-season pickups this year, and all from the sample. It's like drawing from their state's own ranks. That's cool.
So yeah, I will need to kind of review this a little bit more fully. Zach Butters was really good. What a surprise.
The Butters-Rosie duo remain. I mean, the Butters-Rosie duo remained strong. How about 6 free kicks, 4 to none against for Butters?
As much as Bulldogs fans would love to have him, as much as I would love to have him at Geelong, I would be very content with Zach Butters just being a Port lifer. There's something really funny about him that just goes really well with Port. The playing with his tongue out and making the crazy faces and stuff, he can be kind of unhinged in a very good way.
Give it another year, and if Libba goes, I think he does still end up a Bulldog, but there's a lot of satisfaction of seeing him alongside Rosie, and that would be well. Plus, there's some other guy, he's got a funny name, I think, who fits in with them pretty well.
Is he maybe, I don't know, a little promiscuous?
I mean, I'm not sure if he's promiscuous, but seems to be excited.
Other things, just real quick, Lachie Jones finished this season really well.
Subject of our first ever post.
It was also
I feel like we're talking too much about Port, just gotta say it. Because their season's done, and moral coming, so he didn't crack the 8. I guess there was a send-off for Rory Atkins as well, although not like he did that much.
Yeah, he came on as a sub and had a couple moments.
Against one of his old sides. he will not be going round and round. On the
But
Suns, another very active game for Braden Fiorini with 27 disposals, 7 marks, and 7 tackles. 3 goals from 2 Bens, Long and King. Jai Farrer continuing to hold a spot over Jed Walter. Is that going to persist into finals? I think at this point it probably should.
the other Ben, Ainsworth, was pretty much non-existent. Ethan Reed had a couple of bad misses. Just outside of Lockie Weller was the top-rated Sun, which did not register with me until I looked at the numbers after game. The only two who I thought were pretty impressive were Sam Collins, who was not just kind of anchoring the defense, but actually had 3 score launches as well. And then Tuke Miller doing his usual Tuke Miller things where he's just like, I've referred to him as kind of like blink and you'll miss it. He does this a lot where he'll get a clearance or just have a super long kick and you won't even realize he had the ball until it's like another 30 to 40 meters downfield. It's like, oh, that had to have been Miller because that's just how he operates,
I don't think we're going to get votes for either a Matt Rowell or Noah Anderson for this one, though Rowell, with his 5 tackles, is still on the radar for getting the new all-time record. The Suns obviously have one more home and away game to go because what was supposed to be was it supposed to be the second game of the season? The third? I forget. But
I think
Cyclone
third,
Alfred.
Yeah,
because Cyclone Alfred is the point.
Yeah, because Brisbane Geelong was supposed to be the opening game, and then I know Hawthorn at Sydney was game 2, so I think it would have been the third.
That sounds right. Like the Saturday game is what it was supposed to be. Anyway, that's now the Wednesday, obviously.
It's would it be a live rubber, or we need to come up with other terms? So there's a dead rubber now. Would a live rubber be a game where both teams have something to play for, or just one? Because then you could also have like a live some other term for a game where both teams have something to play for. We got to flesh this out.
I don't know. This is like sort of hard, but a touch of awkward, easy, difficult, challenging. But a winning formula for the Suns tends to involve Ben Ainsworth. I think he's perhaps their biggest barometer. And when he's held to just 13 disposals and only 2 score involvements, it's an indication that something was planned right and or Ainsworth's having an off game and the Suns weren't going to get there.
The 13 disposals are totally fine. It's the 2 score involvements that just don't really fly. I don't know. Again, I'll have to do a thorough review for what the free kick count on this game should have been. It probably should have been closer than 30 to 13. But the Suns were also just like remarkably undisciplined again. Oh, actually, sorry. Did I say it was actually 33 to 16. I think 30 to 13 was the count at one point during the fourth. Anyway, I mean, maybe it should have been more like, I don't know, 29 to 20-ish, but it should have definitely favored Port, just probably not to the extent that it did.
I want to go quickly on these final 2, Ethan.
Yeah. Oh, we'll be really fast on the Geelong game because really there isn't much to go off there.
Okay.
North Melbourne, 15-10-100, defeated by Adelaide, 17-11-113. Wasn't easy, but the Crows do lock up the minor premiership. Now, they led this game by 5 goals during the second quarter, got the lead back out to 5 early in the fourth, actually out to 6 goals, and then North made one last push to get it back down to 13 points, got it down to 2 goals with a minute and a half remaining, but a little too late there. And yeah, Crows, it's really funny that you have people talking about Geelong as, oh, they had such an easy schedule. No, they just had a lot of their tougher games early. I mean, I guess you could say it was a little easier than it should have been for a team that was top 4 last year, but let's talk about the Crows schedule.
Well, their double ups were Collingwood, Gold Coast, Hawthorn, North, Port, and West Coast. So 2 finalists from last year. And overall, a schedule that was fitting of a team that finished 15th and had been languishing in the bottom third for most of the past few years. Obviously,
getting both North and West Coast twice was certainly something that probably should have been discussed more. Also,
hey, you know what? 3 of the bottom 5 teams got that, and one of those bottom 5 was West Coast themselves. So no, I actually don't think that's that much of an issue. And the only reason North didn't get West Coast twice was because they played them out in Bunbury. So honestly, I don't think that's that big a deal. If it happens again, or if they were, say, 8th place last year and got that, then we'd be talking. Oh, wait, 8th place last year did get North and West Coast twice.
And didn't do shit with it. I mean, they won 3 of those 4 games, but I do think like the Crows had a few opportunities schedule-wise that they maybe didn't take advantage of, such as only having Geelong at home and having some of the easier road trips like Richmond.
Still, I can't help but be happy for them because
yeah,
a team with a lot of players that I've enjoyed for a while, and even with the stuff that just went down with Rankin, just the continuation of Riley Philthorpeness is something to behold. Being proven totally right about James Peatling, who did it all in this game with 5 clearances, 4 tackles, 3 goals, and 3 assists. You can find Ben Keys in the 3-goal club as well, by the way. Had to say that.
This was an extremely low-pressure game.
And that kind of was against the Crows' MO. I mean, again, a lot of it was just, let's get through this healthy. We know we should win. Win by any margin. We are minor premiers.
But yeah, offensively, at least, North actually gave me more than a few good signs. I am officially all in on Cooper Trembeth. This guy is really good.
What was it? 9 goals in 3 games? And he signed on for next year. You know, he's not going to get more right now, but super positive signs from him.
For North to once again score 100, again, low pressure game, but to score 100 without Nick Larkey, and actually North won on expected score by 15. They actually, expected score was a tick over 111, and they had missed some chances, especially in the first 2 quarters where they really could have done some damage. That's encouraging.
I still believe the right team won, although there is strong encouragement.
Yeah, no, I thought basically the Crows had the 2 best players in Philthorpe and Peatling, and then like past that though, this is one of the few games where it felt like Adelaide did have some dead weight, as opposed to where most of the year, you know, they've had really good depth performances. I did not see as much of that in this one, although I did like Billy Dowling, I will say that, and you had a couple points on him that Crows fans agreed with. Also, Sam Barry was probably the best Crow in the first half, but Sid Draper got subbed out, did nothing. Hugh Bond, who had been so good the last 3 weeks, got his butt kicked by Paul Curtis.
That's Paul Curtis.
I also don't get why they didn't switch that matchup around. Like, that should have been the number one focus for your defense. So that was a bit weird.
Especially with Larkey out, it threw me off there. But I mean, that's a matchup that you would like to have Max Michaelaney for. They obviously didn't. So growing pains for Bond, who has shut down the likes of Jack Higgins already early in his career.
Like, why not give that matchup to Nick Murray?
Why not give it to Mitch Hinge, quite honestly?
Yeah, Alex Neil-Bolin was pretty quiet this game. Zach Taylor was nearly non-existent. Dan Curtin limited to 7 disposals. Jake Soligo got quieted, which kind of fit in line with just the midfield as a whole getting beaten in clearances, especially.
I'll also mention... say that.
Clearances for this game were 48-27, and if there's a concern for the Crows, it's that the midfield has shown some cracks and shown a little bit, with the exception of Peatling in this game, a little bit of a regression to what they were at the start of the year where, you know, at first they were a team that had to outscore everybody. Then they were a team that just had to dominate both 50s. And then when they were really rolling, they had the midfield performing as well. Now I have a bit less confidence in that. And I would still say, like, even if they had had a better midfield performance here, I would have said going into finals that of the 9 teams still alive, in fact, if you want to just look at the top 10 and include the Swans in it, probably the weakest midfield of the bunch. But I thought they had done enough to close that gap, and at times had been the better midfield against some really good teams. I'm definitely less confident in that now.
Defensive midfield issues, I guess, have resurfaced again, aside from Peatling. That's where Neil-Bolin will need to pitch in more. And then
Luke Davies-Uniacke had 12 clearances. Now, you kind of saw both the good and bad with Davies-Uniacke. He was kind of chaotic. Only credited with 3 turnovers. It felt like a lot more, but still he had a presence. Luke Parker, I thought, was really good with a goal and 10 clearances, had an assist as well. More than half of his possessions were contested. And this was definitely, though, obviously faced with a great challenge, but North's defense, not good. Toby Pink kind of had more trouble in this game. Just got
that honeymoon's over.
Yeah,
that honeymoon's over, as much as I hate to say it.
Yeah, he got pretty clearly outdone. I mean, most defenders are going to struggle with Phil Thorpe and Walker, but he also had a couple of turnovers that didn't help. For some reason, Aiden Core was playing forward at times, and I don't get why, and wasn't very good.
Why not?
I mean,
got nothing better to do, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like that's good experimenting. And
not
then,
like winning it. Not like winning or losing this game really does you any favors, because you don't have your first round draft pick. I'm still going to laugh about. I am still going to laugh about that.
Probably the biggest negative, Jacob Constanti had a really, really bad miss. And as much as I had liked him a couple months ago with how hard he plays, he might be a Lockie Murphy type where it's like, all right, what does he do? Well, he plays really hard. Okay, what sort of skill set does he have? He plays really hard.
Yeah, that might do it. And speaking of Murphy, he wasn't in this game after definitely playing his part the week prior, and definitely some spots that are up for grabs come finals in a couple weeks. Although, you'll be expecting Mike Delaney to come back. Other than Max, there are some question marks there, and I'd love for Dowling to be able to keep his spot. Remember, he played 9 of the teams, I think, he played 9 games in the back half of 2024 and averaged 17 disposals at that time. Was a very active player for them. Was averaging a goal plus at that time too. So see him get a couple goals was really satisfying, and I think he made a case for potentially keeping his spot. Especially without Riken in there and Rochelle still being and Rochelle perhaps still being out of the picture too.
Like I would think Sid Draper will not stay in. My guess is Zach Taylor's going to be their sub.
Do you think Murphy gets in?
I don't know who else would come out if you get Michael Laney back in, though.
Taylor himself? You Bond?
I mean, defensively, if Bond was to come out, it would just be for like Jordan Butts, right?
Or Michael Laney, because you can see Mike Laney taking the small to mid-sized matchups. It depends on just what they want to do with Max. And I don't want to disrespect Bond, but that's just also the type of performance Paul Curtis is capable of.
Yeah, I think it should not be lost that Bond had 3 really good games before this. I think whether he stays in probably comes down to matchups. If you're facing a smaller forward line, there's all the reason to have him in.
Michael Laney would probably be the one to get tasked with Jamie Elliott, though. Paul Curtis, by the way, finishes on 38 goals in 19 games. And remember why he didn't play those other ones. He ought to be in at least the All-Australian 44.
I don't know. There's only so many spots that go to forwards. I don't know if he gets that, but by no fault of his own.
Richmond 9-10-64, defeated by Geelong 14-19-103. Now on Friday night, my friend Cole, who's a Hawthorn fan, is definitely up on the tipping side of things, and the betting side was asking me if the line looked right for Richmond and Geelong or West Coast and Sydney. I correctly advised him to take the spread for Sydney and not for Geelong, because Geelong's concern, like Adelaide's, was just winning.
Yeah,
that was a pretty easy task, especially once we found out that Nick Flawstone's season ended last week with his broken ankle. And once the second half started, you could tell Geelong were just on a mission to play a pretty slow game. It was a 63-point margin at halftime after Richmond scored 1 point to Geelong's 35 in the second quarter. Really, if there's something to take out of this game, it's from the first half, although Tigers fans will try to convince you that 9-score final term really meant something going into 2026.
I mean, I think you're encouraged if you're Richmond that the guys weren't checked out and played hard all the way through. But yeah, knowing that Adelaide had won, all right, margin doesn't matter, just win. First 10 minutes were pretty sloppy, and then Geelong dominated the rest of the first half, kicked 6-7. There's your Gen Alpha meme thing in the first quarter.
Okay, 6-7, I only really have been catching on to because of my 5th grade students.
It's something from some rap.
Some drill thing, I think. But not that I'm not owned drill. I'm not slowly turning into a corn cob or whatever. I would actually like drill rap, but it's just drill from Twitter.
That would be funny. Most important moment in this game was when Brian passed his concussion test, because I feel like if he hadn't had one earlier this year, I don't know if he would have even needed one. He had this play where he was in a double team, had like a no-look over-the-shoulder handball to Jeremy Cameron that led to an Ollie Dempsey goal. That was awesome.
It was hot.
He caught some contact on the face, totally incidental, from Camden McIntosh. Was down there for way less than 20 minutes and just had to basically sit and wait for the rest of the 20 minutes on the bench. But he was fine. That was the most important thing. And then from there, you have it's like, all right, we have even more reason once you've seen something like that to not push anything. And yeah, could they have kicked straighter? Sure. I'd rather save that for September. Do that when it really matters. Tom Atkins in his 150th career game was very good yet again.
And broke the tackles record for a single season.
Believe he finishes the home and away season on 203? He had 9 in this game. It was last week when he only got credited with 5 and should have had way more. Didn't get a milestone goal, but got 2 assists. Jeremy Cameron kicked 4-4. I think we can probably put away the 100 talk, though it was fun. And it was fun, the broadcast turning into talking about, what happens if you get to 100 in the grand final, do they run on the oval? That was all a fun discussion.
Meanwhile, the NRL says, no, you are not to invade the field if Alex Johnston breaks the tries record. You will be fined and perhaps arrested.
You know how the NFL's the no fun league? The NRL's the no run league because you can't run on the field.
I mean, you do plenty of running in game, though. Yeah, we'll get to that in a sec. Let's do it right now. Oh, right now? Right now? All right. Here we go, a very brief part when we talk about the
NRL. Coolest ending ever?
Yeah, we actually saw a cool golden point for once.
Penrith tries to kick to win the game, just a drop kick from the field. It hits off the upright, and Canberra go back the entire length of the field to win the game. This was super cool, and my biggest observation out of this is that goalposts should be in play in American football. If it hits
my
a
thought
goalpost,
is that isn't it sometimes an arena?
I don't know, maybe, but
I forget.
If it hits a goalpost and lands inbounds, it should be a live ball.
Do you think that should also be the case for Australian rules?
No, I'm fine with that being the way it is. I mean, I'd be okay with it, but it's tough because it would basically only be for when it ricochets directly off the front of the posts. Whereas with the NFL, it would be easy enough because of the boundaries, the back of the end zone is just a straight line. Just it has to land within the end zone.
By the way, that golden try was why the Raiders are currently sitting atop the ladder with just 2 matches to play. So that's pretty cool. They're ahead of the Storm by 2 points. Melbourne taking care of business against the Bulldogs. So there's that. But that has been the part where we talk about the NRL. I guess getting back to Richmond, not enough booze for Noah Balta.
I was in favor. There were some. It was pretty good.
Were you booing him when you saw? Did you boo him when you were there?
Yeah, but most of the Saints fans weren't all that big on booing him or Tom Lynch. By the way, Tom Lynch is a genuine polished turd candidate for this game. He was really good and had probably Tom Stewart's only negative of this game. Lynch gave him a fat don't argue. Lynch with 3 goals and 2 assists. He was just good and non-controversial. Polished turd, I would think maybe him or Cam McIntosh, who ended up one of the more well-rounded performances for Richmond out of this game. 6 score involvements and 4 intercepts. Will he...
His last game for Richmond, let's see who goes for him. Why is my thought Essendon?
Oh, I was just thinking West Coast, but...
Yeah, I guess with the whole former Tiger theme there.
Much rather have someone like him than Matt Owies.
Completely. Dion Prestia was rated quite highly by Champion Data and did have 2 goals for 29 disposals. Your thoughts on the meatball?
He was fine, but the Geelong midfield did a good job. After the first quarter, O'Sheen Mullen put the clamps on Tim Taranto for a while. This was one of Bailey Smith's better games. I guess just negatives. Tyson Stengel kicking 2-4 and just he's, other than the game at Sydney, had a lot of accuracy issues with set shots lately. Like, Stengel's going to be fine from ground level, and a couple of the ones he missed were like little bouncers that would have looked really cool, but I do not trust him on set shots right now, which is not ideal. And then just the one other thing, I didn't think Lawson Humphreys has played his best lately. He just looked a little shaky and less confident, and I would love for him to get back into form heading into finals. Not a huge concern, though.
Gotta say, satisfied with just the gradual progression of O'Sheen Mullen. Never going to get a huge number of touches, but is now consistently
He might over
factoring.
time. I've said, he's good for a couple of clearances each week, and
he had 4 clearances in this one and 2 setter. So
yeah,
that's
I think
exactly what I was going to bring out.
I think in a couple years' time, you could see him as just like a really solid overall midfielder. So don't be so sure about that. I think
No, it's a gradual rise. That's my point. And where he is now is where he can contribute, in pockets of the game at clearance. And there are some midfield heavy matchups where he's going to need to have those big moments again.
look, if this is his ceiling, you take it. But I still think he could end up being like a really good defensive midfielder who over time can actually get more of the ball and eventually maybe get that first career goal that he still doesn't have, that he keeps coming annoyingly close to. I would love if he could basically just replicate Sam DeConing's first career goal in about a month. That would be awesome. To anyone looking, actually concerned about the second half, don't be, because there's very recent evidence that this team can take their foot off the gas and then switch it back on when needed. Like, look at the Essendon game. Look at how there was some concern, like, all right, will they be able to switch it back on going into Sydney? And after about 15 minutes at Sydney, they completely did. So I am not worried about that. Other couple quick Richmond things. Taj Houghton was one of their better players. I've liked the way he's finished off the season. He'll be a fun one to watch, and it'll be really fun. As much as I am not a Richmond fan, as much as I probably put them as like my somewhere around, I don't know, if I'm to rank all teams on how much I like and dislike them, they'd be somewhere between, 13th to 15th. It's going to be really cool to get like all of Sam Lawler and Josh Smiley and Houghton and all these guys out there at the same time. And it's going to be a fun watch. So I do look forward to that.
More Seth Campbell as well. He had 2-2 from 19 off 8 marks as well.
He and Ryan Mansell are a fun combo.
I would like to see Seth Campbell in the grand final sprint representing Richmond. Hugo Ralph Smith has had his time. Now I want Campbell to do it.
I think Hugo's coming off another hamstring injury too. So I would think, you gotta. Also, have I mentioned how much I love the grand final sprint? There's something so funny about how simple it is. Negative for Richmond in this game. Sam Banks was their lead disposal getter, I believe, but he had some really bad turnovers. I thought he's had a decent season. Definitely cemented himself as like a regular. Now, I think sometimes broadcasters have been a little bit higher on him than has been deserved, but this game, he had a rough one. He had multiple kicks out on the full and bad turnovers and just an unfortunate end to what was a pretty decent year.
Overall, though, Richmond far and away past their expected mark for the season. And I think delving into them during Citing and Crack the 8 is where I'm going to get some real good, I'm going to get a real kick out of it. So what if they lost it? So what if they ended their season on a losing streak? It was genuinely fun watching Richmond because it was fun seeing the pieces come together, knowing, okay, this is what they tanked for. They went in wholesale like more teams should.
And they did that in spite of rarely having all of those pieces out there together. Like, I think going into next year, even the most optimistic projections for next year probably wouldn't have Richmond above 12th or 13th. Probably have them just around where they were this year, but dangerous. They will have a couple games where they just shit the bed. They had a few of those, but they will have wins over good teams again next year, like they did this year against the Suns.
Mate, I hate Tubman here.
Like they will be dangerous with of the teams towards the bottom that you don't really think have any prayer of playing finals. I think they might have the most dangerous like single game ceiling.
You know, Benjamin, 78% of our listeners are between 18 and 35 years old, so they probably want to start a podcast like we did.
How did you know that number, Ethan?
Thanks to the analytics we have for Spotify for Podcasters.
Formerly known as Anchor, sorry Frio fans, Spotify for Podcasters has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from your phone or your computer. No fancy software needed.
It's so easy you can edit it while drunk.
And Spotify for Podcasters doesn't just allow you to upload to Spotify, you can also distribute your podcast on platforms like Apple, Stitcher, and more, just like we do.
Best of all, it's completely free.
Not only is it free, you can even make money from listener support or ad revenue. Hint, hint.
Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to podcasters.spotify.com to get started today.
And welcome back to episode 257 of Americans Watching the Footy. I'm Ethan Castle, coming to you from St. Louis, Missouri, or at least in the shadow of the St. Louis airport.
I'm Benjamin Castle, still in South San Francisco. Well, you can find me about half the time in Redwood City now because that's where my job is.
Have any of your kids said chicken jockey?
Nope, they're all about 6, 7.
I tried listening to the song. It's really dumb.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm on Twitter at BenjaminHK01, Instagram at Mr. B Castle, MRBKASSEL. Where can I find you, Ethan?
Twitter at Castle Media, Instagram at Ethan R. Castle. You know what song the kids should be going crazy over instead?
Something about putting the fries in the bag?
No, Big Fat Meatballs.
Of course.
It's kind of just a repurposed We Bring the Boom.
Whoa, duh. Collectively, we're on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Americans Footy. At some point, somebody else will take that handle for something.
OnlyFans? Quibi?
Quibi?
We should be on Quibi. I think it's time for... We haven't done this, everyone. Yeah, we haven't done this in a while.
Well, we've got multiple reasons to. Firstly, let's look at the American football side of things because last year's VFL leading goal kicker, last year's Frosty Miller medalist, Billy Gowers, is punting for the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors.
I love this. The Australian punter and the Japanese kicker who is like self-taught from YouTube videos. And they beat Stanford, which is hilarious. Now, I will admit, in the big picture, Cal and Stanford propping each other up in the world of conference realignment would probably be optimal. But this is too funny. You know, this is great content.
Especially with the footy overlaps there, this is absolutely awesome. On the Australian side of things, contracts, imminent trades, things of that nature.
Well, first off, who's not getting contracts? Jeremy Finlayson, that's not a surprise. Jed McEntee, his claim to fame will be being the fly in Tom Stewart's ointment in Port's very rare win at Geelong last year.
The one that surprises me there out of all them is Hugh Jackson. I really can't be shocked by any of the others. Although I am a bit surprised to see Willie Rioli retiring.
What an interesting final act.
What an interesting career.
I mean, I've seen crazier endings to careers. I don't know if you ever heard of this guy, Antonio Brown.
I don't think Willie Rioli is going to be a contributor to CTESPN.
I mean, I would love to have seen Willie Rioli finish his career just like walking off the Oval shirtless.
I'm glad he's doing it on his terms. He's got a premiership medal and just a really important role from the get-go at West Coast. Obviously, wish he could have done more, but I just hope now he can contribute to something effective in some sort of indigenous footy sphere.
Within the next 5 years, there will definitely be a video from someone on Instagram of him kicking like at least 10 goals in a local game.
Oh yeah, he'll probably be playing in the NTFL for a while. Tiwi Bombers for life.
Oh, one of the funny conversations that I had when I was in Australia was like someone asking about, you know, like what do guys do after they're done playing football in the US? And like, you know, they were surprised to find out there aren't just really like local adult football leagues. Now there is a craze lately going on social media with like the 40U league, which is pretty funny. But yeah, that's really not a thing here. What, like guys don't go from playing professional football to playing like recreationally.
Like you can see it maybe sometimes for basketball. Yeah. Beer league hockey is another thing, I guess.
But yeah, it really doesn't exist in football. It would be pretty funny, if we just have some 35-year-olds throw on pads and then one day out of nowhere, Darren Sproles shows up and runs through them all.
I'm thinking about now Hideki Matsui playing in the rec league in New York and batting right-handed instead.
This is the part where I talk about another podcast.
Is it the Solid Verbal?
No, it's actually Baseball Barbacast. They had a whole bit about
My second guess there.
basically that sort of deal, like an Uncle Drew type thing, except then the guy takes off the disguise and it's just Seth Smith. It's the most nondescript person possible. He wouldn't have even needed a disguise to blend in. And I just love that idea. It's guys, it's me, Seth Smith. So I guarantee you he is the last person who would do that, which is part of what makes it so fun. Seth Smith is responsible for one of my favorite quotes ever after a playoff game. Via text message, he said, "Buddy just said I'm trending on Twitter. Is that a big deal?"
Was this after a walk-off or a clutch?
After he had I think it was the game-tying double.
Good.
Yeah, one of my favorite just quotes by itself. You don't even need the context, and it's funny.
Getting back on the Footy contract front, I did see that Jaden Hunt is retiring for the Eagles. Better to retire than be delisted. I don't really think any of the other decisions are really shocking me, but we now know the terms, or are starting to know the terms of Tom DeConing's deal with the Saints.
I'm going to have a lot of fun explaining this to American audiences. Yeah, people are up in arms over one of the biggest contracts in AFL history being handed out. How much is he making? In US dollars? About $1.3 million a year.
We could say that about two Saints now. And it sounds like Rowan Marshall remains in the picture too, but an 8-year deal for Tom DeConing. Kane Corns will have a field day with it the entire time because it's the Saints and nothing will come from it.
I don't know if we've ever seen a team devote so much of its payroll to just a couple of guys. I think it's interesting. Will it work? I don't know. I can tell you it hasn't ever worked in the NHL. I think it was nobody making over $10 million a year has ever won a Stanley Cup, I think was the stat.
It'll happen someday with Edmonton.
I don't know.
Give them anybody but Florida. It will happen.
You think, and this is a little foreshadowing for you, you think Bont has no help? You think he's been wasted? Look at these guys.
Considering where we left off, I think we're kind of at the right time to get back into the games, even though the biggest story in all of footy didn't play in that final game for his team. West Coast Eagles 7-9-51, defeated by the Sydney Swans 18-10, 118. The Eagles led at halftime and then got outscored 38-1 in the third. They are officially the worst team in the AFL era.
And frankly, the fourth quarter was even worse in a lot of aspects, just from a visual standpoint.
At least they didn't give up 200.
No, see, that's the thing. This team, I still think, despite having the most losses and the worst record, I think they've been worse the last couple of years. I think the 2023 team was worse. They also got outscored, 45-8 in the fourth. They kicked the first 3 goals and actually played a really good first quarter for the most part, played with a lot of speed and aggression and pace.
There was passion, there was vision, there was aggression. It was a strange sort of thing. I'm completely with you, Ethan, in that just the raw results weren't there, but percentage and amount of games that weren't ever truly blown out, there's a degree of respectability there that was missing for a lot of 2022 and 23.
Oh yeah, man, this is totally different than the team that gave up 205. It's just they were never stringing 4 quarters together. At most, they would play maybe 2 good quarters. In this game, it was maybe 2. You had a feeling at the end of the first quarter when they had played so well and then gave up a goal off a bad turnover in the final seconds. You're thinking, ooh, that's going to come back to haunt them. But what was it that took things away in the third quarter? Because the fourth quarter was some of those runs Melbourne had in 2021 were just center clearance, goal, center clearance, goal, center clearance, goal. But what happened to the third quarter? Let's start there. Or were the seeds planted in the second quarter?
I think the seeds were planted in the second, and then we just saw it kind of all come to fruition in the third, where Sydney started looking more fluid from stoppage, and once West Coast had expended their reserve of energy. It was easier for them to get burned on the rebound like normal. That's where you can have the decisive kicks of, say, Errol Golden and Braden Campbell, who I really want to highlight from this game, really matter. Campbell's long kicking is just a beauty at times.
It was terrific. Even from
everybody always talks about Nick Blakey and his lizard runs. And I think Campbell has had a bit less attention on him this year because he's done more in the forward half, but just his outside kicking, especially as a left footer, has been super valuable for Sydney over the past 4 years. And I don't think he gets talked about enough in general. He's just one of those
even from not watching all that closely,
like, I could tell you that much. Even though he was picked number 5, he still flies under the radar, which is kind of insane, but that's also the nature of the Swans list. By the way, Campbell had never kicked more than 8 goals in a season and doubled that this year. Just, again, more active in the forward half, more directly involved in scores.
this is the early obvious pick for a team that missed the 8 to not only make it, but make the top 4, because someone goes from out of the 8 into the top 4 like every year. This is such an obvious one.
Well, let's see what kind of schedule they get. Do they get a middle 6 schedule, or do they get more of a schedule of you're always a contender, here you go, which is kind of the raw deal that Port has gotten a couple times in the past few years. I like that Campbell has played every game this year and never been touched on either the sub in or sub out front. That's something we saw less of last year. He was a frequent sub.
Well, I guess that, like, when this team's fully healthy, someone like him or Sheldrick can be, but, you know, you're never going to have perfect health. But, you know, if someone like Campbell or Sheldrick is somewhere around, I don't know, the 15th to 20th best player in your lineup, that's a very good thing.
I wish Sheldrick hadn't signed on.
Jake Lloyd seemed pretty heavily involved at almost 96% efficiency, 8 score involvements, 4 intercepts.
I feel like we're burying the lead here just with this having been the kind of expected faces show for Sydney. We talked about Papley kicking 3-1 from 27.
I mean, Callum being that good wasn't expected,
I guess, but I mean, just
there's always someone against West Coast who goes from, like, instead of just being good to being, like, untouchable.
True, but still the combination of Heaney, Golden, Mills all clicking was to be expected, especially when you get a lot of opportunities to rebound. Heaney kicking 1-2 from 26 with 10 clearances and 3 assists. Mills, 29 disposals and 9 marks. Errol Golden, 2 straight from 36, 10 marks, because that's just how he is getting play, and whether he stays on the outside or brings it in, he's a frequent uncontested mark target. In fact, all 10 of his were uncontested and generated scores from that 10 score involvements, which was third for the game behind, well, Papley and Heaney. Let's just see what kind of angry messages did that guy write about James Rowbottom from this game.
I was just going to get to that. I was going to wonder, because he had 2 goals, he had 11 tackles, he had an assist, 8 score involvements off of just 11 touches.
Let's see.
How many goals, at least something from the first quarter? There has to be.
Well, earlier today, he said, in response to rumors about Charlie Curnow still being open to a trade to Sydney, he responded, give them Rowbottom, Laddams, and draft picks.
Okay, so he's just any, like, U.S. radio caller, except other than that he thinks Rowbottom is bad. But, you know, like, every baseball talk show, you know, it's like, hey, we should trade shitty player for good player. Like, you know, yeah, he's just like any American radio caller. Like try to think of an example. I'll do a baseball example. Sure. Hey, first time listener, long time caller. I think the Giants should trade Sean Jelly to the Dodgers for Shohei Ohtani and Yoshinobu Yamamoto and Freddie Freeman. And thanks for taking my call. I'll hang up and listen.
You forgot Mookie Betts.
His OPS starts with a 6 right now, though he did homer tonight.
Yeah, but Mookie being down would sweeten the deal for the Dodgers.
But yeah, I love people like that. Like, I should just go on shows. I should have gone on shows in, like, I don't know, 2023. We're like, yeah, I think Geelong should trade John Seglar to Brisbane for Lachie Neale.
Basically, this guy absolutely hates the idea that pressure is a valuable trait.
I don't even know what the guy's handle is, and I don't even want to give him... Actually, do you want to give him attention? I'm always on the fence.
Look up row bottom and just go to latest and you'll always find it.
Like, look, if Geelong didn't have Tom Atkins, I would be screaming to have row bottom. The thing is, though, I will say, if you had too many guys like that, which the Swans don't, it would be an issue. Like, I don't know if, especially against a faster team, you could accommodate both, like, Atkins and George Stevens.
I love how this guy also is like one of the biggest Chad Warner fans out there at the same time.
It's funny because Chad Warner has a reputation for not showing up in big games. I think he's fine. I thought we talked about a couple weeks ago. I forget which Instagram page it was that called him Sydney's most disappointing player this year. Like, no, it's clearly Florent. West Coast finally debuted Luca Grego. Probably should have done that sooner. He was taking kick-ins to mixed results. I just like giving that a try.
Just good to get guys the ball early on. Worked for Tom McCarthy. I mean, you saw North has done that for a couple of their high draft picks with Sheasel and McCurcher. Just get them touches from the back, get them used to having the Sharon at AFL level, and then work that into higher leverage situations.
But like, there was a stretch until the final couple minutes, really the final sequence of the first quarter where it was like, hey, maybe they just come out and play their asses off and win this game, which would be hilarious. And then the moment they gave up that goal at the end of the quarter, you kind of knew. But man, when it falls apart, it gets rough. And that's, I think, the next step for this team is just like, they have these stretches where they just get fucking slaughtered. And, it doesn't happen for a whole game. It happens long enough, and they aren't able to counter it with explosive enough stretches to be able to offset it.
I'm glad this season's over. I'm also glad I watched through it all, but obviously Eagles were forced to play about as young as any team not named Essendon. That experience should be a good thing in the long run. Hopefully it'll bring pace with it.
Oh, they just need more endurance to be able to play at that pace for longer. Because it was nice. Like, they were actually, that first quarter, they were being deliberate. They weren't, standing there after a mark looking around for like 30 seconds before deciding what to do. Like,
they actually had a decent percentage of playing on for marks there. It was nice to see them push the pace. It's just a fact that they can't do it for long enough. So that's where strength and conditioning plays a major role.
And if you're going to play a slower kick mark game, you need to have more accurate kicks and just someone who's a better field general with a sense of which kicks to take.
Hey, and Liam Duggan wasn't out there, so that's an improvement. Although Liam Baker is now suspended for the first game next year.
That seemed like a pretty fair suspension.
Surprised it wasn't more.
GWS 15-14-104, defeating St. Kilda 14-9-93. The Giants lock up a home elimination final in what ended up being a surprisingly captivating game. I thought early on, once the Giants had the first 4 goals, it was like, hey, maybe they could do this win by 20 goals and jump into the top 4 thing. And then all of a sudden, the Saints had the lead by the middle of the second quarter, never led by more than, I think, about 8, but hung in it the entire way. Actually, no, they got it to 10 with 13 minutes left on Darcy Wilson's 5th goal of the game.
Oh, yeah, that's a story, I guess.
Both Darcy Wilson and Max Hall were very good. Now, Hall, this is not new. We've seen it with Hall. Wilson, we've seen it in flashes. I remember liking him in the obligatory annual win over Geelong at Marvel last year.
Well, it was really last year in general that Wilson was higher profile. Pulled well for Rising Star at the end, and was also responsible involved in the play that led to Harley Reid's suspension. So there's multiple things there.
5 goals and 2 assists from 23 disposals, 10 score involvements, 5 intercepts, 11 contested possessions, and over 78% efficiency. I also thought Jack Sinclair, while he only got credited with 4 score involvements, I thought this was one of his better games and just kind of like shaping things from the back. And they almost might have been a little too reliant on Zaya, considering he was barely hovering at 50% efficiency. Like, look, it's obviously great to be able to have a guy that can just follow the ball and be everywhere and drive play upfield when you need it. But hopefully they won't, this is an indication that if other pieces are good enough, they won't have to build the entire ship out of Messiah. Like, obviously you want to be able to have that in your back pocket, where if all else fails, just have Messiah do literally everything.
There's a balancing act and a sharing of power, especially halfback and wing, where Sinclair definitely still plays an important role.
I think Hall plays an important role with that too.
For sure. It's a matter of giving both of those players the space that they need and how Wilson could do it too. We saw Wilson succeed mostly as an outside player last year. So it opens up the game for Isaiah. You imagine that he'll continue to get more and more inside time, especially as some of those more important midfield pieces age, though Jack Steele showed little signs of aging with an 11 tackle and 18 disposal game. But Ethan, why did the Saints not win this game?
They didn't wear the candy stripes.
They wore the tricolor, and I knew from there GWS would be fine.
It's like you forgot to say clear.
I forgot to say clear. Toby Green kicked 4 goals too. Not a real surprise.
This was his best game of the year.
Saved it for a good time.
11 score involvements. I thought despite low efficiency, Tom Green was really good. 6 center clearances, 10 score involvements. Efficiency was only around 50%, but he also had 33 disposals and 13 clearances.
All right, I'm using it.
And then Max Grzewski continued playing a solid fill-in for Jesse Hogan in the forward line with a 3-goal outing.
Well, we know that Wade Dirksen is looking elsewhere from the Giants forward ranks. I wonder if Grzewski might be inclined to do so as well. Where is his contract take him? He's out of contract after next year.
Speaking of the forward ranks, Callum Brown, who was a forward, was dormant for 3 quarters and then came to life in the 4th. That was massive.
Brown,
and then
Brown on the tall side, having important plays, but he can also play smaller than himself as well because he has that sort of goal sneak potential too. Could get away tight window kicks. 4th quarter was also the best quarter for Darcy Jones and his helmet.
Callum Brown actually had the go-ahead goal, then nearly had an assist on another, but Jake Riccardi missed. Then Tom Green got Zach Jones holding the ball. It ended up being 3 goals in a row and a 21-0 run in all. Saints got it back to within a goal, but Toby Green then took back-to-back ridiculous hangers. The first one he unfortunately did not punctuate with the goal. I say unfortunately, even though probably would have been to Geelong's benefit if the Saints had lost, because just you take a hanger like that, it deserves to be followed up with a goal.
But then he went back with the flight right after that to get the intercept. And I think it's the best sequence of marks and important plays by a Giants since Harry Himmelberg, a 1/10 of a mile apart at Norwood.
Now, the Saints would have had to go on a crazy trip downfield in order to have a chance to win the game, down by 5, which admittedly they've done. But Darcy Jones got a handball from Kieran Briggs inside the forward 50, and Zach Jones, who had played well until that 4th quarter, really those final 5-10 minutes, kind of left his man, tried to defend Toby Bedford instead, and Darcy ran it in to finish the game. Zach Jones, despite the ending, I thought he was solid, but he did admittedly within the final 10 minutes get caught holding the ball for a goal, missed a shot that could have put the Giants back in front from smack in the middle of the forward 50, and then had the flub at the end that helped allow the winning goal to score. But I do think it should be noted, there are some games when Zach Jones has really stunk it up. I thought he was really sharp in this game for the most part, and just the fact that he messed up in close situations down the stretch should not undermine that he was one of the many reasons that the Saints even had a chance in the first place. And I thought they played with good pace after the first few minutes, and they did a really nice job not letting Sam Taylor get too heavily involved, which was especially impressive considering the forward line or lack thereof on the tall end. I mean, you have no Mitch Owens. Max King was out for the entire season. Isaac Keeler did play over Max Heath. That's going to be an interesting thing to follow with the Saints over the next year or two. Is just like, how do you sort out the crowd between Keeler and Heath? Yeah, they did a good job making Sam Taylor look just not great, which is hard to do. One other thing about the Saints that kind of frustrated me. Now, Anthony Caminiti got some praise as the game went on, but I still question making him a defender. Like, physically, he is there, don't get me wrong. But he still is also...
You see, this also ties up with the questions about everything else with the Saints tall rights, and I like Caminiti as a tall right away when he was that supplemental pickup a couple years ago. I also love that he's kept number 47. It's just when you're almost getting in the way of everything else if you put Caminiti tall.
You've got enough tall defenders. He's got forward skill, and then Ross said, no, make him a defender. And yeah, he gave up a couple of marks and a couple of broken tackles that just, he's still, again, he has the physical skill, but there is some sense of playing the position that he does not have clearly. And I still think even if you had Owens and King healthy, I would still like to see him in the forward group. Plus that would allow Cooper Sharman to play in a smaller role, so I'd be in favor of that. Also would let, if he's ever healthy, Matthias Filippo do more small forward work. He left with another calf thing to cap off what was honestly just a lost season from what can be a really entertaining player.
That's the second time that's happened. We're going to go obviously more into detail with what the Saints have and where we might see them kind of sorting out the list in 2026 as currently stands. So you didn't crack the 8 coming up this week. Look forward to that.
And yeah, the subs in this game, Jack McRae was the sub for the Saints. I'm not sure what the purpose was with that. Like, personally, I would just have, I mean, I get that you're not playing for much, but I would rather have one of my best guys in there for the entire game. Even if, post-bye he wasn't as good as he had been. He's still an impact player. And then Stephen Cornelio got subbed out with concussion. He will have ample time to get back before finals, but if he doesn't quite hit the benchmarks right away, that could become an issue. And he once again started really sharp. He's been first quarter Stephen Cornelio and fourth quarter Callum Brown were two of the most important things in this game that helped the Giants hold off a charge from a Saints team that, like, I'm just pleasantly surprised that they were able to keep up in a higher scoring game and had a chance despite giving up 104. Like, that's so against what you expect of St. Kilda.
We've seen it in flashes, and with Lions' willingness to let the team play fast, it's less of a surprise now that it was the start of the year. You mentioned fourth quarter, Callum Brown. I'll also mention, again, fourth quarter Darcy Jones in his helmet with his most complete quarter. Then just up and down the lineup, there are different Giants who had flashes, who had enough flashes, and there are still obviously changes to be made coming into finals. Cornelio, we said, should have time to recover. We're also looking at Frank Daniels being in for finals. That is very likely, almost confirmed according to Kingsley. Josh Kelly could be ready then, so tough decisions to be made. But the fact that the Giants have been succeeding without those pieces makes their fifth place finish all the more impressive.
I mean, other than Brzezinski, it's going to be some tough decisions on like who you take out. I would guess. I mean, Jacob Ware seems like another obvious one, but like
it would be tough for Ryan Agwood to miss out, but he's a likely one. Xavier O'Halloran seems like a good sub candidate. I would think Harry Rouston, despite his 4 goals showing recently, Harry Rouston's probably at risk.
I would think Lecalier is good to go, but if Jack Buckley's ready, I guess that would come into question.
It'll be a matchup thing. I just look forward to more finals Finn Callahan. We're going to start seeing more and more people getting on the Finn Callahan train. It's been happening this whole year, but finals, especially any finals win, will make it all the more obvious. Callahan was one of the more consistent Giants in this game. He ended up with 5 clearances and 7 tackles and an assist from 26. On a day where not many Giants were consistent, he was one who I regularly looked back to and just was like, oh yeah, he was there for that too. Western Bulldogs, 14-13-97, defeated by Fremantle, 17-10-112. We should have seen this coming, yeah.
I didn't, because I just thought, oh, the Dockers don't travel all that well, and the Dogs usually play well at Marvel. I actually was very confident in the Dogs winning this, and the middle 2 quarters, 11 goals to 3. Second quarter in particular, 44-3. They have a thing for getting absolutely demolished by Freo in second quarters. This is the second time this year, and there are other times it's happened before that.
even thinking back to the elimination final from a couple years ago.
The Dogs started off very well and felt like, they had pissed away some chances where they could have been up much bigger. And then this was a really puzzling game in that there's no one individual performance for Freo. Just everyone had moments. Jai Amos was huge in the second quarter. Shea Bolton got it going. Everyone, and it's fitting, beating the Bulldogs despite the Dogs having the top 2 players by rating. Now, some of that was padded by when they made things interesting in the fourth. But Marcus Bontempelli was excellent and deserved better, and Joel Frazier was quite good as well. But they just don't have the manpower and the depth to be able to handle things if Ed Richards is just kind of okay. And for Ed Richards, he still had 6 score involvements and was over 75% efficiency despite about 2/3 of his possessions contested. He still had 21 disposals and 2 assists, but
if you've got the top guys playing, anywhere from 75% of their potential, it's fine, but the end of depth can sort itself out. It's just the Dogs don't have that tier of enough players who can step up into that main support role. I know main support is an oxymoron, but you get what I'm saying, that second tier behind that midfield triumvirate, and especially as parts of that are aging, Bontempelli and Liberatore, though Bont showed no signs of it there. Meanwhile, Freo has had more of that depth over the years.
Lima did kind of get beaten on clearances after the first quarter, I thought. But if you're that reliant on a guy into his mid-30s, that's also a problem. If Geelong were reliant on Patrick Dangerfield to get 8 clearances a week, actually that's how many Lima ended up with. But if that's what you need, that means either your scheme or your list management or both are extremely flawed. And boy, there was a lot of dead weight for the Dogs in this game.
Well, they did actually, the Dogs actually were +6. The Dogs were actually +9 in clearances at this game and +14 from stoppage. Yeah, having said that, numbers were in Freo's favor from the center, 18-13 there. And that was where Caleb Sarong's shown he had 6 of his clearances from the center, along with a couple from Hayden Young and a few from Neil Erasmus. Also, Erasmus making a case to stay.
Bailey Anfield was more active. I thought it was kind of a mixed bag from him.
Anfield got a lot of the ball. A lot of it ended up being kind of halfback flank, which is a spot that he's taken reasonably well this year.
It also just means you're asking Sarong and Brayshaw to do less. I mean, Brayshaw was just okay, 19 disposals, 7 tackles. Sarong, 24 disposals. He did have 7 clearances, and I thought he was their most consistent performer, but for him to not get up to that magic 28 and be limited to 4 score involvements and 1 intercept, and for them to still win this game, and despite what the final score may show, the fact is they led this game by 36. They led this game by 44 with 17 minutes left. It was a 32-point game at 3/4 time. Yes, the Dogs made a late push that made things somewhat interesting, getting it back to 15, but between the start of the second quarter and the middle of the fourth, they got their asses handed to them. There was a lot of dead weight on the Bulldogs list in this game. Do you remember what I said after they escaped with that win over Melbourne a couple weeks ago?
A lot has happened since then. I don't quite remember what you said.
Well, I had said I'm fine with their defense long term, but I'm concerned in the immediate picture because this is not this can be fine in 2 months. This is a what have you done for me lately situation that they had put themselves into. And Rory Lobb was downright bad in this game. James O'Donnell wasn't much better. And then Jed Busslinger, despite having 7 intercepts, just looked really, really shaky. Lockie Bramble was largely non-existent. Jason Johannesson, as much as I like him, looked just old. I don't know why they had Bailey Williams trying to defend Josh Tracy at times. That confused me as well. Or who else was he on?
Williams was thrown onto a couple weird ones, just whichever Tall was trying to occupy some outside space. Jai Amos did that at times as well. But the 4 contested one-on-one losses for Rory Lobb all definitely stood out for me. And though he did have 6 spoils, it's more about the contests he couldn't get a hand to that stood out for me, especially as all of Patton Voss, Josh Tracy, and Jai Amos kicked 3 goals.
And that's just a symbol of how, there was, I guess Jai Amos deserves some extra credit because his big spurt was in that part that helped turn the game around. But like that stat kind of shows you that, yeah, everyone had a few moments. It's an ancient Chinese art and everybody knew their part.
No.
Yes. And just collectively, despite giving up 97, I thought Frio's defense did a great job. Who I think might be one of the barometer players for the Dockers, or at least I don't know if barometer or more like Delta. I guess maybe Delta player would be the right term. Because, in math, Delta is a symbol to represent, change. And the change in Frio when this guy is on versus when this guy is off is massive.
Is it Freddie or is it Switkowski?
Neither. It's Brennan Cox.
Ah, okay. I thought you were thinking about more ball movement, but I guess this is in contrast with the Bulldogs just looking so shaky in tall defense as a whole. Meanwhile, with Alex Pierce having had less time in this year, although he was in for this one and largely strong, just Cox being able to complement him. It also means Luke Ryan doesn't have to do as much on the pure defensive side, so he can think more about distribution.
I actually thought Luke Ryan, this was one of his best games contesting defensively as well. He had a pair of intercept marks and didn't lose a one-on-one. Cox, 3 intercept marks, 13 spoils. And Pierce, despite losing 3 one-on-ones, also helped keep Sam Darcy goalless.
That's the thing. You had all cylinders firing defensively on the tall end for Frio, and kind of that was the game couldn't handle more defensive success. I'll credit Luke Ryan as well. Had you not jumped in where I would have said, but Ryan also did play well in this one. It's not what he's typically asked to play well.
And yes, he still was involved in ball movement, but it was more than that. Like, he and Jordan Clark had less movement roles than usual. And in part, that was Banfield having 8 of those rebound 50s. The rebound 50 breakup out of that defensive group. Ryan 12, Banfield 8, Clark 4, Warner 3, O'Meara, Chapman 2. Keith Chapman was just fine, which, he's had some kind of big swings and hasn't had his best season in a lot of respects. Like this, the 3 we already talked about plus Chapman can really be a force defensively that I think hasn't gotten its shine this year. And that's scary because you feel like at times Rio's a team that we haven't always seen them at their best, and they're still in this situation where if this team fires on all cylinders, it's really bad news for anyone they're playing against. I will mention, by the way, this is just a super random tangent. I had mentioned Bailey Williams. I didn't realize Eagles Bailey Williams was among the best in the league on contested marks this year.
I did.
Yeah, that was something I forgot to mention in the last game. It has nothing to do with this.
Eagles contested marking has actually been okay for a lot of the year, thanks to Bailey J and Flynn looking better at that. I know the Paps where they actually did have forwards meant something too.
It's bizarre then that they don't play as well in a slower game, but that's completely irrelevant to this. We're talking about their presently much more successful neighbor.
With arguably a more successful and more dynamic Reed.
Murphy Reed is one who I think got better as this game went on, and I think with Dan Curtin being pretty quiet in a couple of games lately, specifically the game at West Coast and this week, I think I would go Murphy Reed for Rising Star right now. As much as Dan Curtin's been great, as good as Levi Ashcroft's been,
it's been consistency for Murphy, and there were a couple plays in this game, just a couple setups along with his goal where I was just like, yep, give Murphy Reed the Ron Evans medal, stop the game to present it to him.
Like the laminated certificate Drew Brees got?
No, I actually have the full fucking ceremony, honestly, but it's the fluidity that he has as a first-year player that stands out to me. And
yeah,
being an option.
He's not just kicking goals. He's creating them. He's good at ground level. He's much more well-rounded than you would expect when you first
have him directly forward of the midfield triumvirate, or I guess there were 4 involved in this game with Erasmus stepping up when Brayshaw was kind of down. And yeah, Caleb Sarong didn't get to 28, doesn't matter if you've got another strong contributor or two around him. And in this game, it wasn't even Hayden Young. So again,
I will say, give Hayden Young credit for helping keep them afloat in the first quarter. That's where he was huge.
but it's a testament to just the midfield build as a whole that even without all the big three, even without really two of them having their better games, Frio were able to win against a generally high-scoring opponent and put themselves into finals and get a home final while at it. So, well done, Dockers. I look forward to watching this weekend.
I guess they were Springfield and Flanders wasn't there, so nobody sucked.
I didn't see much of Sam Flanders for the Suns this week, so I guess we can say that.
Players in this game, I just want to mention Lockie McNeil, 4 disposals. Yes, he had an assist. I don't care. He was, unplayable in British English is a compliment, nobody can match up with him. No, this is unplayable in the American sense. You can't have him in there. When they subbed out Jed Busslinger, all of a sudden, McNeil was back in defense and got deked out of his shoes by Michael Frederick. Now, he did have a broken tackle to set up an Arthur Jones goal, and that was a positive. Arthur Jones was good. He had 2 goals coming off as a sub, but you dropped Riley Sanders. Buku Kamas could have helped in a lot of different roles, whether that would have been just another tall to create some interference in the forward 50 or defensively when Lobb and O'Donnell didn't get it done. One guy I will not knock, despite only having 9 disposals, was Riley Garcia, who I think was battling some injuries as the game went on, but was just he was an energizer. He was a pressure guy. He was one of the few out of that group that I liked. He got to 15 pressure acts. He did his part. But not getting much out of Sam Davidson. I did think Oscar Baker was okay, but just at the bottom of this list, I don't know how much of it's a Luke Beveridge thing and how much of it is a list management thing. When
we sound like a broken record, despite this team being one that can easily score, it's just you've got, 14 guys that you'd have locked into the lineup every week. And I will say,
it's not like a broken record because they're in the same situation every year where their entire season comes down to the final round.
Yeah, and I'll mention Riley West being one of those consistent 14 and being number 14 while at it. I'll say, he's gotten better and better each year, and he's reaching his peak right now as he's, I believe, 25, finishes with 39 goals on the season.
Now, I know Bont does have a premiership medal, but this is up there, especially with how well he finished this game. This is totally up there in the same realm as Connor McDavid and Mike Trout. Now, McDavid has 2 Western Conference championships, and Bont does have a premiership and a second grand final appearance, but it doesn't take much to see just how good this guy is, and it's really disappointing when you have someone who's so universally liked that it's not getting done. And despite how mad Bailey Smith makes them, I like the Bulldogs fans. We've had great interactions with a bunch of them. It's you've done the hard part. You've got these great players. Now, I saw one Dogs fan we follow today complaining about some of the free agency stuff, how Sam Draper is looking at last year's premiers and this year's minor premiers. But we can have it. We'll save the argument for whether Sam Draper is actually that good for another time. But even if you're not getting big name guys, guess what? Anyone can go out and find the next Ned Lawn. Anyone can go out and find the next Sean Manna. Nothing is stopping any club from doing that. And that's what the Bulldogs continually fail to do, is to find something in the margins.
And finally, well, actually, not finally, but you get the point. Brisbane Lions 11-23-89, defeating Hawthorn 11-13-79. I know that the Lions were planning on donating, I think it was, $40,000 for every goal, so maybe that could explain part of the inaccuracy, but Brisbane win by 10 behinds, and they get the top 4 spot, despite consistently getting in their own way to the point that they kicked 8 behinds for the first quarter.
I think I'm kind of okay with this.
This being Geelong playing Brisbane now as the second qualifying final.
Yes, it is obviously terrifying that they did this without Lockie Neal and Jared Barry, both of whom will be back in. I get that. But we pissed away a game at the Gabba this year. And we played maybe our worst game of the year, at least self-inflicted wise, at home against them. And I kind of love just going in right away to a qualifying final and having a shot at a team that's gotten you twice and that the challenge is right in front of you. Whereas Hawthorn were scaring me, although in this game, I mean, even the first quarter, other than Bobby Orchol's 3 goals, they were not very good. You know, they had been on this nice little run the last couple weeks, winning their first 2 games without Will Day. Josh Ward was held much more in check in this game, and Brisbane dominated the midfield. You know how I've said with Tuke Miller, it's kind of like, you know, you're looking back, and it's like, wait, who did that? Oh, it makes sense. It was Miller. It was a really long kick, and I hadn't seen who had it.
Who's your equivalent here for this game?
Totally different style of play, but in addition to what he does with just limiting guys, Josh Dunkley will pop up and have a disposal somewhere around the edge of the forward 50 in a good shape.
And we saw it even more this game because no Lockie Beal, no Jared Berry. Dunkley, in addition to his direct stoppage work and his defensive acumen with 5 clearances and 8 tackles, ended up with an assist from 33 disposals and 9 score involvements, which was tied for 3rd most in the game. How about Bruce Reville with 9 of his own and Zach Bailey and Hugh McCluggage with 11 each? We knew McCluggage would do this, and he's probably your Merritt Murray medalist for the year. I'd say that's actually the pretty easy one there. But
I don't know. Harris Andrews has a case.
But it's Bailey stepping up these past couple wins that has stood out more for me, just because I wouldn't call him mercurial, but you get it. Whereas like he's a player who can complete this team a lot, and we haven't seen it as much this year.
And that's with the Ashcroft brothers just being okay instead of great lately. And for them to win games like this when the Ashcroft brothers have just kind of been okay is huge. I mean, I thought Will started this game really hot and then kind of faded a bit, but he was nonetheless important.
For Bailey, last year we saw impact on the wing in finals. Now he's returned to a more inside job, more half forward, and that's ended up working well. Meanwhile, Reville was shaping more from the outside, from the half back up to the wing. And I think some of that play opened up because while the Lions don't really have any true wings, I'd say, you know, maybe Akshi could be one, but he goes everywhere. I think Barry being absent allowed Reville to be a bit more attacking as in his play style, and that worked out. So it was good to see that from Bruce. Just we know that this Lions team has incredibly strong depth, but it's a matter of actually filling the holes that are left instead of just instead of just being, oh yeah, we've got this next guy up who's competent enough. No, it's we've got this next guy up and he can complement the other styles still. He fits into our structure.
Cam Rayner had a really slow start and then kicked it into gear. Now, Brisbane still kicked 11-15 after that first quarter, but his involvement, I think, made them cleaner in the forward half altogether. And he was one who, while it wasn't his best game necessarily, the times at which he was good really helped turn the tide, like in that second quarter, to get Brisbane into that lead. You know, they outscored Hawthorn 38-20 in the second, 6 goals to 3. And he was definitely important in just like when he switched on, a lot of other things started working very well at the same time. And that's not coincidental. I do want to give Hawthorn some credit for a couple of things and then really knock them on a couple. They did a good job staying away from Harris Andrews, testing Ryan Lester and Darcy Gardner instead, which is what you're supposed to do against Brisbane in their current state. You know,
I mean, that was done for, I remember that was done for part of the Lions game last week. And then by the time the fourth quarter rolled around, just Harris Andrews was everywhere, which is kind of the reverse of how you'd expect it. You'd think, oh, yeah, you challenge Andrews early. Oh, man, he's on today. Let's go elsewhere.
Oh, I just wouldn't challenge him from the start.
No, I wouldn't either. But most teams are going to try and poke that bear a bit. But Wilmot and Lester with 3 intercept marks each, they did their jobs. And Wilmot has had to be more of an actual defender as of late, just with the injuries that have occurred back there. And he's done that well. I'm still not surprised by the ways the Lions won this game, again, just because their structure is so sound, because the expectations are clear, and because the players that stepped up have done so in similar ways to what we've previously seen, I guess, with the exception of Reville. And meanwhile, Reville, we did see that in the twos for him. Expected score for this game, having checked what it was on Blue Sky, 108.1 to 67.5. I think that's mostly indicative of just the chances blown in the first quarter for Brisbane, having left 40 points on the board there alone. This was a greater than the sum of the parts game for both teams, and more visibly so for Brisbane, which is why I think it's fitting that they won this game. I'm not going to question the right team won this game, despite that garbage front-on situation that involved Starcevic.
I'll talk about an umpiring thing in a minute, but first, things Hawthorn did well other than avoid Harris Andrews. I thought Jack Scrimshaw showed up pretty nicely. Connor Nash had a really good first half and then faded after halftime, and that was significant, and that was where things really started to slip away. And tactically, Hawthorn had one major problem, and that's that they did nothing to match up with Hugh McCluggage all night. Is Sam Mitchell against a tag, or does he just expect Nash to be physical enough at stoppage that it's not going to matter? Maybe it's without Finn McGuinness, they just don't have an option for that. But even so, like, even if it's not, you're not going to straight up tag, like, someone's got to get on him at clearances. Like, that's one of the reasons the Lions don't have to tag so much, is because, like, Josh Dunkley is able to just get in and win one-on-ones and just, like, neutralize somebody. And they did not do that. Hawthorn fans are pretty bothered by a call with 6 minutes left in this game where they called insufficient intent on Carl Amon for handballing straight out of bounds. I see this akin to when you kick out on the fall. It should just be the other team's ball. That's fine. I just think insufficient intent is a misnomer. It should just be a shitty kick. Honestly, here, I think the intent was clear too. It's just like, I'm backing up. Oh, I was trying to disguise this. Now I'm going to put on a shitty handball and try and get away with it. Yeah, no. Oh, no, I don't think so at all. I don't think this was a shitty hand. I don't think there was any intent to go out of bounds. It was just, well, just a break. No, it was just poorly executed. And I'm fine with that being just a kick-in for the opposing team, just like it's a kick-in when you miss a shot for goal on the full. Like, like a blatant skill error being a turnover is fine. I have no issue with that. It's just the terminology. Hawthorn have one really, really big issue that they need to address. Do you have any idea what that issue is?
I mean, I've got a couple that I could think of for Hawthorn. We already talked about the issue with the tagging. The actual one-on-one in the defensive 50 still doesn't enthuse me for them either. So I don't think it's just one thing. What are you going for, though?
Can't win out of state.
Where are they? The Gold Coast Suns?
They won games in 3 different states all year. They took care of things in Tasmania. They obviously won a bunch of games in Victoria. And they won an opening round at Sydney against a team adjusting to a new coach with a bunch of injuries coming off of the shortest offseason possible. Outside of Victoria and Tasmania this year, they picked up 4 out of a possible 24 points. For reference, Collingwood, who is known for never leaving Victoria and doesn't have home games in Tasmania or any other state.
They've never even played in Tasmania.
I know, but my point is that whereas Hawthorn won in 3 different states this year, and 2 of those states were their home games. Collingwood has a win in Queensland, has a win in Western Australia, has a win in South Australia, and of course won a bunch of games in Victoria. When you've won games in fewer states than Collingwood, that is really bad. 4 out of a possible 24 out-of-state points is really concerning, especially when you're going to have to go on the road for finals. Now, this one, I don't think it was so much like an immaturity thing and fading late like it was in the Freo game. You know, the Suns game up in Darwin, they played their asses off and lost to a team that plays their absolute best up there. But the combination of this and the Crows game and the Freo game and getting absolutely embarrassed by Port at the end of suggests a larger problem. Like 2023 Geelong, a team that missed finals, had 2 out of a possible 20 out-of-state points, and that was only because the Swans kind of gifted them a draw.
I knew you were going to go there, Ethan. I knew you were going to make that comparison. I was waiting for it. Thank you. The difference is this is a finals team. We're not talking about, prior years of Gold Coast.
Now, look, there's a world where this team goes and wins at either Rio or GWS, more likely GWS, and then could go and, maybe they're playing in Adelaide shortly thereafter and win there, and we totally forget the whole thing, just like how we forgot about Brisbane's MCG struggles last year. But I won't believe it until I see it, and that is a major concern for them right now, and I think that's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Normally we do awards, but the round's not over yet.
Yeah, it's very strange. I was ready to go into awards for this stuff, but the round isn't over. So I guess we're going to hit all that in the first part of our next episode, because episode 258, in addition to recapping the last home and away game, will be the start of So You Didn't Crack the 8 2025 edition, our full-on post-mortems for the 10 non-finalists. We'll see if it stays as 10 in the future.
I will say we have 3 nominees for assist of the week, 1 because of a vultured goal. We have 4 nominees for behind of the week, 2 from the same guy. We have a front runner right now for worst on round. We'll see if anyone can challenge that.
That be Rory Lobb. Main character,
Nathan Reed and Lockie McNeil deserve mention.
Main character is it Hinkley.
We'll see what happens in this last game.
Could be Hinkley and Boak together.
The moment the final siren hit, everyone ran over to celebrate with Boak in particular. Although Hinkley's press conference after was just delightful.
Again, Ken Hinkley is a delightful figure in the game, and I hope he gets swooped up by Fox right away. I would rather have him on a broadcast than Mark Ricciuto in a heartbeat.
Real quick, we've got one last news thing.
That Jack Silvani is officially leaving Carlton.
Yep, for either the Bulldogs or Collingwood, hasn't decided which yet.
And it would be really funny if it ended up being the Saints, just because his dad's there. But, that would be a direct need addressed for the Bulldogs right away.
No, it's a matter of, can you get him to even be healthy for, 15 games?
It's a sensible thing to try, so I like this. For now, though, we'll say that the conversation continues at Americans Footy on multiple platforms. I am on Twitter at BenjaminHK01, Instagram, Mr. that being MRB Castle.
I'm on Twitter at Castle Media, Instagram at Ethan R. Castle.
Brian Harambe is our executive producer. He's been listening the entire time, all curled up, but most definitely listening. He's on Instagram at CatNamedGrian. We love him very much. He is now 5.
Don't forget, if you like this, give us a nice review. Get it into other people's ear holes. One other way you can get it into other people's ear holes is by playing it at full volume on public transit without headphones. I'm a big supporter of that. And if you hate us, send this to someone you hate and lie to them that you really like it and that it's really good and convince them to listen to the entire thing. We'll even do a box set DVD, even though there's really no visuals to go with it. Americans Watching the Footy, the complete collection.
We could do something with our America's Brownlow videos. Maybe that's a starting point for that. Let's get on to that. Good time of day, y'all. Thank you.